It is hardly necessary to point out that Saint Therese of Lisieux appeals very much to all of us, particularly the women. But her appeal is not limited to women at all, as I can testify from the response of many of us to the flood of light she is able to throw upon how she went about on the spiritual path. There is also a great advantage that she is very close to us in time, almost the time of Swami Vivekananda. And another great advantage is that she was so young. And it astonishes me even now, even though I've read these remarks so many times, to remember that these deep flashes of insight come from a girl who is younger than most of you women here. And she, of course, lived in a great monastery, was a very ardent member of the monastic order. But I don't think any of us need conclude that we require a monastic environment to lead the spiritual life. This is where we have a glorious tradition in India. From the time of the Upanishads, more than 5,000 years ago, where little people like me, living in the village, attending school, playing games, participating in all the normal give and take of life, have been enabled through their teachers' blessing and the grace of the Lord of Love to attain complete spiritual fulfillment. This is very necessary for me to repeat over and over again, because sometimes you may be inclined to think that we need to retire from life, go into a sequestered environment in order to realize the self. Not at all. And if I may draw upon my own small example, I did all my sadhana in the midst of a very active and a very productive academic life. That's why I want to remind everyone, if you're a doctor or an engineer or a printer or a librarian or a cook or a gardener, that can never become an impediment to the spiritual life. In fact, following in the footsteps of my grandmother, now that I look back upon it, I think the innumerable difficulties in the academic world, from the university down to the elementary school, became innumerable opportunities for giving respect to people and yet differing from them when necessary, supporting people lovingly and opposing people lovingly when necessary. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think I could have learned this so in so suitable a context as the academic life that I lived for many years. One day, she said to me, "There is only one thing I want, and that is to become a great saint. I can savor this in my mind so many times, like a piece of candy that my nieces used to lick over and over again. I can savor it so many times because that is the secret of steady progress on the spiritual path." Sri Ramakrishna will sometimes say, when ardent disciples around him, drawn to his radiant personality, say, "Why is it that we are not making steady progress?" And Sri Ramakrishna would look at the life and personality of those people and say, "Because you have so many desires." And I think we all start like that, just as I started my sadhana. But it is possible through the practice of meditation and the repetition of the mantra gradually to withdraw our attention from those desires. It is not desires that pose the difficulties, it is the attention we give. And when you try to follow those desires, yield those desires, think about those desires, dream about those desires, you're fattening them up. So don't get dispirited if you start with many desires, but the sooner you start drawing your attention away from them, the more secure you become, the more loving you become, and the more joyful your life becomes, not only for yourself, but for everybody else. For Christmas greetings, I cannot improve upon this one, which must be new to most of you, as it was to me, by Einstein. This little letter he wrote from Princeton to some school children on the 20th December in 35, that's almost Christmas week, and it brings out what exactly is meant by leading the spiritual life, what exactly is meant by celebrating Christmas, which is not only on the 25th of December, but every day of the year. In fact, Christine, we can get a beautiful card next year for Christmas with this letter, which puts into practice what is meant by Christmas. Dear children, it gives me great pleasure to picture you children joined together in joyful festivities in the radiance of Christmas lights. Think also of the teachings of Him whose birth you celebrate by these festivities. Those teachings are so simple, and yet in almost 2,000 years they failed to prevail among men. Learn to be happy through the happiness and joy of your fellows, and not through the dreary conflict of man against man. If you can find room within yourselves for this natural feeling, your every burden in life will be light, or at least bearable. And you will find your way in patience and without fear, and will spread joy everywhere. See, this is putting into secular language what becoming a saint means. When I think in the early days of this work, when I started using the word saint very cautiously, because it is not used very much in the Hindu tradition, one of the fellows who was with me said, "I thought you had to be dead to become a saint." I replied, "To be dead to yourself. That is all you need to become a saint." When the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi concludes by saying that it is in dying that we are born to eternal life, in practice it means when I turn my attention away from my comforts, my conveniences, my pleasure, my profit, I become completely identified with all of you, which is what has happened through my teacher's example. And when you become aware of the needs of all those around you, you are a living force of love, supporting those who are insecure, opposing those tenderly who are going astray, and showing other people too, helping other people too, through your personal example, in their home, at their place of work, to do the same service, loving service for all. So I'm trying to divest this word saint of its medieval halo. To be saint is to be a living force for good everywhere. You don't have to try. If you go and live anywhere, you will live in such a manner that those around you will benefit. Those around you will begin to change for the better. Those around you will become healthier, happier, wiser in their own personal life. There is only one thing I want, and that is to become a great saint. I like that kind of ambition, which is for the benefit of all. This is exactly what Gandhiji means in the Hindu tradition when he says, when he was asked, "You have no ambition?" "Oh," he says, "I'm the most terribly ambitious person in the world because I want to reduce myself to zero, my self-will to zero." When your self-will has been reduced to zero, you become love itself, and everyone around you will benefit from your life. Because that is the only thing that is real on earth. You can look at the lives of people who have made a lot of money. You can read the lives of people who have become very famous. But in the case of those who have become like this through service of humanity, I think it is very easy to see that money does not make people secure, nor does pleasure make people joyful. I am determined to strive with might and main for this. That's the motivation. And Sri Ramakrishna, with one of his inimitably homely phrases, he will say, "Don't be like damp rice soaked in water." That's a Bengali expression. And you must not only catch fire at these words, you must keep the fire burning. Here again, in practical language, it means that you have to give up some of your old conditioned attachments. You have to turn your back upon some of your old conditioned habits in eating, in working, in returning kindness for unkindness, goodwill for ill will. This is where the practice of meditation gives you the power. It will give you the power, but you have to use it during the many little exigencies of daily life. That's why I began to look upon my campus as a kind of satsang. And it was a complete change in outlook. I had innumerable opportunities to be patient where I would have been impatient earlier, to be concerned only with what I saw for my department only. I am well aware that I cannot accomplish this without suffering, but what a joy it is to suffer for someone you love. She is now giving us one of the most precious secrets of spiritual transformation. I get amazed how this young girl is now giving us the very core of love. I can never get over the wonder of it, that in order to learn to love, in order to know the divine core of romance, we have to go to a beautiful young nun. And if she had written a book on the joy of love, which we hope to do, I think it would have been of help to everybody in the world. The more sacrifices cost you, she used to say, the more you must concentrate on making them cheerfully. The wealth of spiritual wisdom contained in these words, it is only when we try them out that we realize how difficult they are. Our natural tendency is, when the sacrifice becomes a little onerous, we say, why not pass it on to Rick? He needs to grow. This is the usual way, you see. As long as it's within reason, when the nervous system doesn't protest, we'll say, we'll try to make a few minor sacrifices. But when major sacrifices are concerned, we expect others to step into the breach. And Saint Therese now dares us, you see. Remember, it's like Jessica and Julia daring us, saying, when you have to lose more of your personal pleasures, more of your personal profits, when you're not able to do things which you've always enjoyed doing in your little den, she says, that's the time you can now give. That's the energy you can use for this spiritual work. And she'll say it's going to be terribly difficult, But that is how you fill your life with love, with joy. Never miss an opportunity. For if only you knew the value, Jesus sets on even the tiniest act of self-denial. You'd grasp at every opportunity like a miser going after treasure. All that I can say is I'm lost in wonder at the way she is able to show us how to reduce self-will, how to increase our capacity for love, how to become aware of the self. Christine was reminding me about a little incident in the life of Saint Teresa, where I think while washing clothes, some other nun was splashing at her. I got quite interested because this is something they do in our village pools. In my village, if, for example, Ellen and Roseanne have had a little quarrel, who is going to clean the dishes? Roseanne has got to study, Ellen has got to work. So there has been a little quarrel, and if it were in my village, what they do is they wait until they get to the pool. They don't waste words, they waste water. And in the pool, you will have rocks for cleaning the clothes, beating the clothes to break the rocks, as Mark Twain used to say. And both of them will choose strategic rocks where they can splash the largest amount of water on each other. This is often done. And I don't think it ever occurred to any of them that if one stopped splashing, the other would stop too. That's what my granny used to say. And Saint Teresa, when this older nun went on doing my village thing, to her splashing water, she was quite cheerful. She didn't go away. She must have kept on talking. And she's changing the other person, you know. It's just a little instance which we can apply everywhere. Instead of splashing water, you can use any instance that you like, what all we do when we are provoked. And Saint Teresa says, it is these innumerable little acts of self-denial that enable a person to grow to full stature, that floods the heart with love. And it comes through hard work and practice. And those who can do this from morning till night, their lives will become benedictions on the face of this earth. And she says, you grasp at every opportunity like a miser going after treasure. Every statement is so simple. People who are resentful, who are selfish, they'll go after every opportunity for returning tit for tat. And Saint Teresa is asking us to reverse the entire example. I think we have a very homely story in India, North India, where, as you know, chapatis and potatoes go together. Today I had chapatis. That's why the story came to my mind, and I had potatoes too. Aloo means potato. So they'll always say, aloo chapati, chapati aloo. And there was a spiritual teacher who was having his breakfast with chapati and aloo, seated under a tree on a banyan leaf. He had two big chapatis and a big pile of aloo, mashed potatoes. And he closed his eyes to repeat his mantra. And when you are spiritually advanced, when you close your eyes, sometimes you stay on like that for 10 or 15 minutes. And when he opened his eyes, he saw that the chapatis were missing. And there was a boy who had snatched away the chapatis and was running. The spiritual teacher was in good condition, regular walker, trampoline. He was in very good condition. So he jumped up and he ran after this boy. And the boy went faster and faster, but the spiritual teacher at last caught up with him, and the boy got frightened. And he said, here are your chapatis. Are you going to beat me? What do you mean? I said, here is the aloo. How will you eat those chapatis without aloo? This is what I mean by the genius of Hinduism, The whole topic of non-violence, which Michael is expounding in a whole book, just one little anecdote of chapati and aloo, I've done. When our love for another person is wholly spiritual and based on God alone, then as it grows, the love of God in our souls grows with it. These are all words to be etched on our heart. See, this phrase, love of God, she is bringing it down to earth. And when our love for another person, she says, for other people is spiritual, what it means is, when I put Melissa first, Gail first, Sarah first, Sally first, Melissa first in my relationship with them, my love is spiritual. And I should always remember their needs. And when necessary, if they are taking a wrong step, I should put my arms around them, as I do at times, and tell them, I love you too much to let this happen. One can be sure that the relationship will grow more and more beautiful. And this is what love of God means. But it's not enough if one does it only for one or two people. One should try gradually to do it to everybody. And if I can put it, I have fallen in love with everybody. It's a very satisfying state of romance. To be able to love everybody, to live for everybody, that is what our heart yearns for and what our heart can attain. Therese says, when we want that and nothing else. The chief cause of your suffering and troubles is that you look at things too much from an earthly point of view. How does it benefit me? What satisfaction does it bring me? Does it ask me to be patient? Then I'm not prepared. I want it now. Does it say that I must aim at the happiness of everybody? These are questions that we can always ask ourselves. Whenever we feel agitated in a personal relationship, the chances are that we are trying to get our own way. And you remember, I tease, it's not Brian's song really. People have started believing it, you see. It may even go into some dictionary as Brian's song. So let's be very careful to correct it now. This is what most people feel. Now, what a beautiful Christmas, because everything is going my way. And what a beautiful Christmas, because everything is going everybody's way, in which mine is included. So I am not excluding mine, I am including mine in everybody's. This is an expansion of joy. This is a multiplication of the dimensions of love. And if we work at it and work hard at it, I don't see any reason why everybody cannot aim at being in love with everybody. So Michael has asked me, for example, about a little canine problem. You know, dogs too sometimes have a little self-will and can get a little resentful. And see, I differ even from obedience schools, as they are called, because I've had dogs for many years. I've cared about dogs, I've learnt about them, and through patience and tenderness, and sometimes very loving firmness, I could take my dogs without a leash on the road. And Michael has asked me, when you have to correct them, what do you do? I said, instead of hitting them, I used to take a newspaper, fold it, and that was a gesture which the dog began to understand. All my dogs began to understand. Finally, all that I had to do was show the newspaper that I was reading. I'll show this, and he'll come back. So everywhere this can be done. You seek your own satisfaction in things to too great an extent, but you won't find any happiness until you stop looking for it. The last sentence can be engraved on the human heart everywhere. As long as you're trying to be happy, you will never be happy. As long as you're looking for your own happiness, you'll never find it. This has been echoed down the centuries to us. And the main reason why in the modern world, in spite of our mighty technological accomplishments, we have not found happiness is that we are always looking for it. Happiness comes to you when you turn your back upon her and go after the happiness of others. In the Hindu tradition again, they will exemplify this by the supreme vision that I ask for every day, and I would want all of you to ask for every day, is to see the Lord in everyone, in every country, all the time. I am not content with a momentary vision in my sleep, or even with a momentary vision on Dillon Beach. I want continuing vision with my eyes open, always seeing the Lord everywhere, serving the Lord everywhere, living for the Lord everywhere. And Therese concludes by saying, what do you do in order to think of God always? It is not difficult. We naturally think of someone in love. And if you can think of everybody in love, if you can think of all countries, their needs, if you can think of all peoples, their needs, and if you can order your life in such a way that you're always aware that thrift is necessary in the management of Earth's resources, that in everything we have to be thrifty, because there are millions of people who need more food, more clothes, more shelter, more medical help. We are growing in love, falling in love with the Lord of love. This evening's tribute to Saint Therese of Lisieux comes from her sister Céline, who you may remember lived into the 50s. It shows you how close our relationship can be with this very beautiful young woman. And the remarks that she makes in the intimacy of the monastery are equally applicable to all of us who are trying to lead the spiritual life. Oh, I sighed one day to Teresa when I think how much I have to acquire yet. It shows you how intuitively the French mystic will be able to give us the same answer that the Gita gives or the Upanishads give, that you don't have to acquire anything at all. The Atman is already in you. All that you have to do is to remove the veils that cover the Atman. Oh, I sighed one day to Teresa when I think how much I have to acquire yet. Rather, she rejoined, how much you have yet to lose. Jesus himself will fill your soul with treasures in the same measure that you love, that you move your imperfections out of his way. That's why I was saying what profound insight she can give to strengthen us in our sadhana. This is one of the fundamental positions in Hindu mysticism, that everybody is full of worth. Nobody can be worthless even if he tries or she tries. And whatever mistakes you have committed in the past, whatever problems you have in the present, they do not scar your consciousness. They do not sully your pristine purity. You must have seen in our little creek down the access road, the water is already beginning to flow fast, and it's only a matter of time before the water will be covered by green moss. What do you call it here? You must be having some fancy botanical name. Duckweed. Yeah. And I remember when I used to go for walks and would see this bed of duckweed, that I could almost lie down on it and go to sleep. It looked so green, so solid, so tempting, covered with a green counterpane, if you're familiar with that word. And it is only after you've removed the duckweed, the covering, that you find there is crystal clear water flowing underneath. And the practice of meditation is for the purpose of removing the ego weed that looks very green, very attractive, very tempting for us to make us feel, let me lie down in the arms of the ego and find eternal rest. So she's telling from her personal experience that there is nobody who doesn't have this core of purity, who doesn't have this core of perfection, who doesn't have this fountain of love which has been all covered up, almost hidden from our view. See, just as archaeologists, when they go to Greece or to India, they do a lot of digging, excavating, and come across some very valuable relic of a lost civilization. This is what we are going to find in the depths of our meditation, when all the layers of self-will have been removed, all the layers of greed and anger and fear have been removed. There is the inestimable jewel called the Atman shining within the lotus of the heart. There are great saints who have won heaven by their works. It's a very characteristically beautiful remark of this young woman. There are great saints who have won heaven by their works. Therese said one day, but my favorite patrons are those who stole it. I want to win heaven by a stratagem of love, which will open its gates to me and to all poor people like me. See, it is not given to all of us to live on the vast canvas of a Mahatma Gandhi. And the reason why I have been presenting Mahatma Gandhi here is for the purpose of inspiring us to remove self-will, to remove all the obstacles, so that wherever we are, in the ashram, in our relationships with people here, in the work that we are doing, in the press, at the school, at the clinic, in the kitchen, through this work and through our personal example, we can also steal our way into the kingdom of Krishna consciousness or the kingdom of heaven, as Saint Therese puts it. My chief desire through life has been to give pleasure to the good God, to the Atman, to the self, to the Christ within. When we are being kind to everybody in difficult situations, not saying anything discourteous, working with them harmoniously even if there are difficulties, we are pleasing God, as you would put it. I would say if we are moving closer to the Atman. Whenever we are being unkind, we are moving away from the Atman. Whenever we are being kind, we are moving closer to the Atman. It belongs to love to sacrifice everything. When I was saying last evening, this is the quintessence of romance. Love at its highest, at its most glamorous, expressed in very practical words by a young girl who would retire from the world into the silence of the monastery. It belongs to love to sacrifice everything. I put it much more gently when I say, if you are in love, you'll put others first. And you can go about looking around you, You'll see that there is no need to take many protestations seriously. When you find somebody putting those around first, you know that person is in love. And that person is going to grow in love. And the aim should always be to fall in love ultimately with everybody. Just as Romeo is capable of falling in love with Juliet, or Othello is capable of falling in love with Desdemona, The Gita would say, just as Saint Teresa would say, we are capable of falling in love with everybody. You can see, if you can get so much satisfaction out of falling in love with one fellow or one woman, the demands of falling in love with 1,000,000 people brings 1,000,000 more times of joy. That's what the Upanishads, they calculate, they almost give a kind of mathematical table. See, when I was in my high school, I had to learn some of your Western measures of weight. I don't think it is so much American as British. Even now I remember the Malayalam. 14 gram or ounce. 14 grams 1 ounce. 14 gram or ounce. 14 ounce or ratal. 14 ounces make 1 pound. I hope I am correct. Joanne, is it 14 or 16? 16. Times have changed. And it goes on. So many pounds make 1 stone. 14. 14 pounds make 1 stone. Now, see, it didn't make any sense to me. To none of us did it make any sense. 14 pounds making 1 stone. And when we read that marvelous table, multiplication table, on the pages of the Upanishad, it doesn't make sense until you fall in love with 1,000,000 people. Then your joy, the Upanishad would say, is 1,000,000 times the joy of Romeo, 1,000,000 times the joy of Juliet. And if you can fall in love with 4 billion people, which means living in a manner, consuming only minimum resources, always aware of the needs of people all over the world, your joy is 4 billion times the joy of Orlando. And Saint Teresa therefore says, it belongs to love to sacrifice everything. Don't ever say, I like this. Always say, you like this. Therefore, using discrimination, I'll help to make you happy. You love this, which is for your permanent welfare, so even at my expense, I'll contribute to your permanent joy. This is what love means. And it means not sitting by candlelight, which I think we are going to do as a very loving concession to the younger people. But, when I see people sitting by the candlelight and having their dinner, my first inclination is to quote some of the old comic poems that I used to read. And I was reading in the Argus Courier that I get now every Saturday, that there is a well-known restaurant in a neighboring city by the waterfront. You can sit by the candle and eat by the waterfront, admiring the distant view. These are all games which children should play. And for grown-ups, what they have to do is, from morning till evening, be vigilant in putting everybody around first. Just putting one person first is a game. The Atman is in everyone. The other day I was reading you a passage from some scientific forecast that it is possible that they will clone a human being. And I didn't bat an eyelid. If I go to see Europeans again, which I understand will be coming to Petaluma in a couple of months, if I find a clone seated by my side, I am not going to be discourteous. I'm going to say, oh, this is what Sherbatsky, the Russian scholar, says, people who do not have any Atman. Yeah. It's a highly sophisticated Buddhist joke. And every creature has a self. Ganesha has a self, Mukha has a self, Hebels has a self, Whoosh has a self, Froggies has a self. And see, they are not able to realize it, that is all. This we have to remember. They are not able to realize it. It is we alone who have come into the human context who have the capacity to choose between putting ourselves first and putting others first. And in putting others first all the time, we attain awareness of the Christ within. It belongs to love to sacrifice everything. Now, those of you who are not capable of translating these marvelous words into your life, even if necessary over a long period, please don't use the word love. That's how Saint Teresa would apply. It belongs to love to sacrifice everything, to give generously. Never say, well, that's the phrase, give it till it hurts. What do you mean? Give it when it hurts. This giving till it hurts is all right for children, but for lovers it is give when it hurts. If it hurts more, it's a call for giving more. To give generously, to become a spendthrift. Oh, look at the words chosen, you know. Don't go keeping your love in a secret wallet in your hip pocket and then keeping your hand on it to make sure that somebody doesn't lift it. I was reading advice in a well-known journal, how to keep your, prevent your wallet from being stolen. This is one of the important things, you know. It is not conducive to good posture. You Gail's friend says, whatever you do, you can do, provided your posture is correct. If you're going like this in life, it's going to affect your posture and your meditation. And another secret that was considered to be very, very secret, top secret, was keep 2 wallets. One with a couple of dollar notes and a few nickels. Keep it in your pocket, outer pocket. And then inside, keep a small wallet with $100 bills and a little gold ring. So that just when the fellow jumps on you from right, just take it. Shows you to what ridiculously extent some of these advisors can go. The answer is, don't teach people to love money. Don't play up money. Money is just paper, just metal. As Sri Ramakrishna would say, remember taking all those rupees and then throw the gadgets and feeling very pleased with sense of economy. And these sages like Mahatma Gandhi or Saint Teresa of Avila or the great bodhisattvas, they go about scattering largesse, you know, if that expression is still familiar. You stuff your pockets with love and you just go scattering it on everybody. You don't say, have you been good to me? Have you been very nice to my brother-in-law? It doesn't matter. Take it. Help yourself as much as you want. Being a spendthrift. Love is prodigal to excess. Extravagant, you know. Just as when you feel frustrated, you go to Emporium and buy everything that you don't need and spend $500. Being extravagant, you see. You don't care. Similarly, Saint Therese is too like that. When you feel frustrated and when you feel rather depressed, go out and be nice to everybody that you can think of. Good to everybody that you can think of. Help people whom you don't even know. And you'll feel very secure, very joyful, because you've been really extravagant. It is not the bills coming, now it is the checks coming. In the first, you're afraid to open the mail. And now it is all the checks coming. Love is prodigal to excess and never counts the cost. That's so factual, The moment you begin to think, how much am I going to get out of it? How much is it going to cost me? You're not in love. She is not talking about heaven, no, she's talking about being in love. And if you're really in love, you don't count the cost. If you're really in love, it doesn't matter how much it costs you. That's where Saint Teresa becomes very contemporary in saying, don't hope any dividends. See, one or two of the companies sometimes in which we buy shares, not only do they not give any dividends, they even send you a letter saying that there has been a loss. You have received a few letters. And I always feel grateful they are not asking me for any compensation. That's real love, where you not only don't get any dividends, sometimes you even get unkindness and you don't change. You retain faith. It's only very deeply secure people who can do this, because in the long run, there are very few who can resist the impact of such irresistible love. Oh, for that love which gives all with a total surrender of self besides. A great romantic exclamation. And always remember, she is still in her 20s, early 20s. She says, that's the kind of love I feel in my heart, and that's the kind of love, she tells Celine, that she wants all of us to feel in their heart. Here is a little example which should appeal to us very easily. Therese used to say that during recreation, more than at any other time, we should find opportunities for the practice of virtue. Even during recreation, even in the movie theater, even at ACT, even on the beach, we can practice putting the other people first. This is particularly applicable to people in schools, colleges, hospitals. For example, I might be relating to a sister a story which I believe is interesting. If she interrupts me to relate something else which bores me. See, it happens every day, everywhere. I should try to be interested. It's very difficult. You cough, you hem. As I was saying, Joanne, wouldn't you, where did I stop? We all say that, and here, just a little situation to show a marvelous greatness. Be careful then, Therese counseled me, not to try to resume what you were saying. One day I went into Trema, and the children were at the table, and there was Rama saying, as I was saying. Be very careful then, Therese counseled me, not to try to resume what you were saying, and in this way you will leave recreation filled with great interior peace. You may not have any applause, but inwardly you try it and see. You may have a temporary mood of fury, but it will give later on to inward peace when you get home. That's why I say she is really a divine date. You go and everywhere she'll put you first. If only Therese said, we could realize how much we gain by self-denial in all things. Even little things, everywhere. You realize it certainly, I said, that is Helene. For haven't you always sacrificed your own self-interest? Yes, she replied, there is no false vanity. Yes, she replied, I have forgotten self, eliminated the ego, and I have not tried to rediscover myself in anything at all. In that one sentence, we have a picture of the true Therese, of the true lover. One day, in some matters of trifling importance, I had given in to self on several scores. This is Therese's reaction. True, no serious harm has been done. But there are some little ripples on the surface of your soul. To stand up for your own rights is not necessarily a serious offense against your neighbor. It is true, but your own soul is the loser. We are not called upon to be justices of the peace. This right belongs to God alone. Our vocation is to be angels of peace. See, this assertion, I am right, you're wrong. She says, that's not our vocation. Ours is to be angels of peace. Sometimes, even in India, people write JP after their name, Justice of the Peace. We should all be able to write AP after our name, Angel of Peace. Now I am facing death. We are coming almost to the end of our mortal life, middle 20s, younger than most of the women here. Now I am facing death, but my life has been a happy one, which is something very few people can say. We have moments of happiness, or as Thomas Hardy used to put it, in his most cheerful moments. There's an oasis of happiness in a vast desert of sorrow. It is in one of his most optimistic moments. And she says, what the Buddha, who never used to think about himself, would say, which I hope all of us will be able to say one day, I am the happiest of mortals. There is none happier than me on the face of the earth. Now I am facing death, but my life has been a happy one because I have tried to put self-seeking away from me, never seeking my pleasure, never seeking my profit, never forcing my way unlovingly on others. The only way to attain happiness is to know perfect love. Perfect love means loving all, under all circumstances, in thought, word, and deed. And the only way to attain perfect love is to forget self entirely. In other words, if you want to love to your fullest, to your deepest, then you have to forget yourself. You've got to completely eliminate your ego. And when you are able to do that, you will find that you are in love with everybody, or as she probably would put it, that you see Christ in everyone and everyone in Christ. And the only way to attain perfect love is to forget self entirely and never to seek gratification for yourself in anything. This does not mean not enjoy. To the little extent that is possible for me, question, does it please me or does it not please me? This is a question that my mind no longer asks. Once upon a time, it used to ask. Once upon a time, I used to lean towards what was pleasant and move away from what was painful to me. And through the practice of meditation and the allied disciplines over many years, and through the blessing of my teacher, even that question doesn't arise. Does it please me or does it not please me, which is the cause of all our misery. As the Buddha says, when this question arises, sorrow arises. When this question is at rest, there is joy always. Now the only question that arises is, does it help others? Does it benefit others? And whatever is of help to others, I don't have to force myself to do it. It gives me joy to do it. Whatever is of benefit to everybody, whatever my condition may have been in the past, I don't have to decide to do it. I don't have to grit my teeth and do it. I do it with great delight. This is, again, something that we can all learn through practice. If you keep on doing only what you please yourself, you're going to be more and more insecure. You're going to be more and more alienated. On the other hand, if you keep on practicing, doing that benefits what benefits everybody, gradually you'll find joy all the time in doing what is a benefit to everyone around you. And Therese says, you will grow and help others to grow to their full height.